Hey there. Tonight we're heading back to the real Wild West. Not the polished Hollywood version with heroic cowboys and dramatic duels, but the raw, dangerous reality where survival wasn't just difficult, it was unlikely. If you're enjoying these stories, hit that like button or subscribe. It helps more than you know. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there in the comments. I love seeing this little global community grow. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the American frontier, circa 1870. The good news? You're about to live through one of the most iconic chapters in history. The bad news? You might not survive a single day. Before you even open your eyes, the first assault is the smell. Not the earthy, outdoorsy scent you might expect, but the rank mix of unwashed bodies, animal waste, and raw sewage. Most folks bathed maybe once a month, if that. Water was precious. Cleanliness was optional. Your bed, a straw-stuffed sack likely crawling with lice or bedbugs. Your body, aching already. Life on the frontier meant relentless physical labour. Dawn to dusk, no weekends off, no breaks. Farming, mining, ranching. It didn't matter. Your body was your tool, used until it broke. You get up, shivering. If it's winter, it's freezing inside. No insulation. If you had a fireplace, you let it die down overnight to save wood. If it's summer, the heat is suffocating and there's no escape. Clothes? You own maybe 2 outfits. For men, rough denim or canvas. For women, layer upon layer, corsets, petticoats, dresses that dragged in the mud. Everything was scratchy, ill-fitting, and rarely washed. Your stomach growls. Time for breakfast. Beans, biscuits, and coffee. Possibly your only meals for days. Fresh fruit or vegetables. Seasonal luxuries. Meat, if available, is salted or smoked, chewy, dry, and borderline inedible. You drink your coffee. Burnt, bitter, possibly brewed with eggshells or salt. Still, it's hot and it will help you face the day. You grab your boots, but first you check inside. Scorpions or snakes sometimes crawl in overnight. One careless move could mean a venomous bite, and the nearest doctor might be 50 miles away. Outside, you step into the unforgiving vastness. It's beautiful, sure, but brutally unpredictable. A clear sky can turn to a blizzard, tornado, or flash flood within hours. If you're in a frontier town, you're only marginally safer. Disease spreads fast in cramped, unsanitary quarters. There's no proper sewage, no knowledge of germ theory, cholera, typhoid, tuberculosis, always nearby. You walk through town. The streets are just dirt paths, dust when dry, mud when wet. Horse manure is everywhere. The smell is stronger now. Flies swarm. Sanitation, not a priority. You pass the saloon. One of the busiest places in town, but not glamorous like the movies. No swinging doors, no clean floors, no elegant piano music. It's one room, smoky, loud, and dangerous. The liquor might be raw alcohol mixed with tobacco juice, turpentine, or gunpowder. One drink could kill you. Violence. Very real. Not duels at high noon, just drunken arguments that end in sudden, chaotic bloodshed. There's no honor, no warning, no slow motion standoff. Just a bad look and a bullet. You notice everyone's armed, but not just for show. Guns are tools, used for protection, hunting, and sometimes signaling. Wild animals, bears, wolves, cougars, were common threats outside town. Ironically, many frontier towns had stricter gun laws than you'd expect. Places like Dodge City and Tombstone required you to check your weapons at the city limits. The famous gunfight at the OK Corral. It started because someone wouldn't surrender their guns. You walk past the doctor's office, if your town even has one. Medical care in the 1870s was terrifying by today's standards. Most doctors had little formal training. Surgery was done with whiskey and grit. Sterilization? Not even understood yet. Something as minor as a cut could turn deadly. Infection meant amputation or death. Treatments included bloodletting, mercury, arsenic, whatever seemed to work, even if it didn't. If a woman gave birth, her odds of dying could be as high as 1 in 4 in remote areas. Dentistry? Don't even ask. If you had a toothache, you lived with it until someone yanked it out with pliers, no anesthetic, just grit your teeth, pain and whiskey. Your stomach growls again. Time for lunch. But restaurant is a generous term out here. Most meals are cooked in someone's home, maybe sold out of the back room. What's on the menu? Probably beans again. Maybe salt pork if you're lucky. Tough, overcooked, and questionably preserved. Vegetables, slimy or boiled to mush. And food poisoning, incredibly common. No refrigeration means spoiled meat was everywhere, and you're still eating it, because the alternative might be nothing. You overhear a conversation at the next table, rumours of a nearby gang, or another settler killed on the road. Outlaws were real, and so were the dangers of isolation. The farther you were from town, the fewer protections you had. Law enforcement? Sparse at best. One sheriff might be responsible for thousands of square miles. So justice was often handled by the community. Vigilante mobs were common. If you were accused, guilty or not, you might be hanged before sunset. And if you're not accused, you're just another settler watching it happen. After lunch, you walk into the general store. The prices hit you hard. Simple goods like coffee, sugar, or canned peaches cost far more than they would back east. Transportation is costly, and supply chains are fragile. That one can of peaches might cost the modern equivalent of $20. And even if you had the money, there might only be one can left. Mail is irregular. Newspapers are weeks late. If your family is back east, you might not hear from them for months, maybe years. Some settlers never saw their relatives again after moving west. The emotional toll of that isolation, massive. Depression, alcoholism, and suicide were tragically common. People broke under the pressure. Some just disappeared into the wilderness, never seen again. You glance at the horizon. Dark clouds are rolling in. Weather on the frontier doesn't just ruin your day, it can kill you. There are no forecasts, no warnings, just sky and instinct. A sudden blizzard could trap you in your cabin for weeks. A flash flood could wipe out everything you own. A drought could mean starvation. Your home? A sod house on the plains or a log cabin in the forest. Leaky, cold, and fragile. Winter meant frost inside your walls. Summer meant unbearable heat and no relief. You rush back toward your shelter. On the way, you pass a group of miners heading to work. Mining was one of the most dangerous jobs on the frontier. Explosions, cave-ins, and toxic gases were constant threats. Black lung, mercury poisoning, crushed limbs. It was routine. No safety gear, no medical compensation. You either lived or you didn't. But it wasn't just miners. Farming, ranching, logging. Every job out here came with high risk. There were no safety regulations, no government protections. You get home just as the rain begins. The roof leaks in 3 places. You place buckets under the drips and try to collect drinking water. Because clean water was a luxury too. Many settlers drank from streams shared with animals, leading to waterborne illnesses that could sweep through entire families in a matter of days. As the storm rages, you sit in the dim light of an oil lamp, listening to the wind. No electricity, no fire department. If lightning struck your roof, your home could burn to the ground with no one to save you. Night falls early out here. You go to bed aching, chilled, and uneasy. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Let's say tomorrow, you decide to leave town, head west. Maybe you're joining a wagon train to California or Oregon. Maybe you're just traveling to the next settlement. Either way, get ready, because travel in the 1870s wasn't just uncomfortable. It was dangerous, sometimes deadly. The Transcontinental Railroad had been completed, but most people couldn't afford it. If you were wealthy or lucky, maybe you'd get a train ticket. Everyone else? Horse, wagon, or on foot. A good horse cost several months' wages. Wagons had no suspension. You felt every bump. Trails were muddy, dusty, or washed out completely. And if your wagon broke down, you fixed it yourself, or you didn't go any farther. Let's say you're on the Oregon Trail. You've joined hundreds of others making the 2,000-mile journey. It sounds legendary. But the truth? It was a slow-motion disaster for many. They called it the nation's longest graveyard. It's estimated that 1 in 10 travelers died on the trail. That's a grave every 300 feet, stretching all the way across the continent. The biggest killer wasn't Native Americans, as the movies suggest. It was cholera. Contaminated water spread the disease like wildfire. You could be healthy in the morning and dead by sundown. Others died from dysentery, typhoid, or simply being crushed by wagon wheels. Children were the most vulnerable. Many families buried more than one child along the trail. But grief didn't stop the journey. You couldn't afford it to. River crossings were deadly. Wagons weren't boats, but they were floated across deep, fast-moving rivers. Many capsized. Livestock drowned. People too. Even if you made it across safely, you still faced heat stroke, blizzards, snake bites, and starvation. The psychological toll was immense. Despair, mental breakdowns, even suicide were part of the journey west. If you arrived in California or Oregon, broke, sick, and exhausted, you found new problems. Overcrowded towns, high prices, and harsh conditions. The promised land didn't always deliver. Now imagine you're traveling a shorter route, maybe just to a nearby town. Bandits were real. Stagecoach robberies happened. Travelers were targeted, robbed, or worse. And if nature didn't get you, the terrain might. Desert heat could kill by dehydration. Blizzards trapped and froze people to death. The Donner Party wasn't some rare disaster. It was an extreme example of a constant danger. Even getting lost could be fatal. Maps were vague. Directions were passed down by word of mouth. If your supplies ran out, you weren't getting help. You also begin to notice something Hollywood often forgets. The Wild West was wildly diverse. There were people here from everywhere. Chinese immigrants, Mexican families, black cowboys, Irish miners, Scandinavian farmers. But diversity didn't mean equality. Chinese workers were treated brutally. They built railroads, worked dangerous mines, and were paid less than white laborers. Anti-Chinese riots destroyed entire communities. Mexican landowners often had their property stolen after the Mexican-American War, even when treaties promised it would be protected. Black Americans made up a quarter of some cattle drives, but were often erased from Western law. They faced discrimination and violence. Just like in the South, they'd escaped. And of course, Native American nations. Their lands, culture, and way of life were being systematically destroyed. Disease, war, broken treaties, buffalo slaughter. It was cultural erasure on a massive scale. Native children were taken from their homes, sent to boarding schools, forced to abandon their languages, religions, and traditions. Kill the Indian, save the man. That was the official policy. This wasn't a land of heroes and villains. It was a land of survival, displacement, and hard choices made under pressure. And what about women? They didn't sit in rocking chairs waiting for cowboys. They worked, constantly. Women ran farms, gave birth alone, defended homesteads, raised children, cooked, preserved food, and built communities. They carried rifles, milked cows, and sometimes buried their husbands. Their labour held the frontier together, and yet most couldn't vote. Married women couldn't own property. If a marriage failed, the man got the kids. Many turned to work that society later vilified, like running boarding houses or working in brothels, because there were few other options. A few places, like Wyoming, granted women the right to vote earlier than the rest of the country. But overall, frontier women were often invisible, until something went wrong. Still, they were the backbone of survival. Let's talk cowboys. The image is iconic. Wide-brimmed hat, six-shooter on the hip, riding into a pink sunset. But the reality? Being a cowboy was one of the worst jobs out there. They weren't gunslingers. They were cattle labourers. You worked sun-up to sundown for barely enough to eat. Most cowboys were teens or young men, roughly 12 to 25, often orphaned, landless or poor. The pay? Terrible. The danger? Constant. Stampedes could crush you in seconds. Lightning storms could kill your horse. You might ride for 14 hours a day, sleep under the stars, and then wake up soaked from a flash storm. And contrary to the myth, many cowboys weren't white. They were black, Mexican, or indigenous, groups later written out of the legend. When the job was over, you'd ride into town with a few bucks, blow it all on drinks or poker, and be broke again by sunrise. That's not freedom. It's survival on a loop. Now picture life in a mining town. Dusty streets, a few hastily built wooden shacks, a saloon, maybe a blacksmith, and rows of tents stretching up into the hills. Mining was brutal. You worked with dynamite and crude tools, deep underground, breathing in toxic dust. One cave-in and you were buried alive. And if you did strike gold, chances are a corporation, land baron, or corrupt official would take it from you. Or you'd spend it all and die broke anyway. Boomtowns sprang up overnight and vanished just as fast. Lawlessness wasn't the exception. It was the rule. One good poker hand could get you rich. One bad insult could get you shot. Prostitution, addiction, and violence were rampant. Justice was whatever the biggest man with a gun decided. Back on the homestead, farmers had their own hell to endure. You had to clear land by hand, trees, rocks, stumps. Then dig irrigation ditches, build fences, tend crops, and fend off predators. Droughts killed crops. Hail flattened fields. Locusts devoured everything. If you took a land grant through the Homestead Act, you had 5 years to improve the land, or lose it. That meant 5 years of near-constant labour, with no guarantee of success. Winter came fast. Cold came hard. You might burn cow dung for heat, eat dried beans for months. Some settlers didn't see another soul for weeks. Just wind, snow, and silence. Mental illness was common. Loneliness could drive people mad. There are stories of entire families losing their grip during isolated winters. And yet, they stayed. Because turning back meant shame. It meant failure. It meant risking the same trip all over again. This time with less food, less money, and less hope. By now, maybe you're wondering why anyone did this. Why leave the cities? Why risk everything to build a life in a place that might kill you? Because for many, the West wasn't about comfort. It was about escape. Escape from poverty, from persecution, from the past. For immigrants, former slaves, debtors, widows, and dreamers. This was the only place left. And sure, there was land, freedom, opportunity. But it came with a price few were prepared to pay. So the next time you picture the Wild West, don't just think of saloons and shootouts, or cowboys and gold. Think of the frost-bitten fingers, the broken teeth, the mass graves by the trail. Think of the mothers burying children, the miners who never came back, the horses that died pulling carts through blizzards. The West wasn't won, it was endured. By people who were tougher than legend, and often forgotten by it. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, remember, the real Wild West wasn't a story, it was a struggle, and most didn't survive the first chapter.